Larry Bird humiliated this rookie at the free throw line in front of thousands, and years later became his coach. This is the most hilarious Larry Bird trash talk story ever told. But before we reveal the greatest trash talk moment in NBA history, hit the subscribe button because the story gets better every single minute. The legend of Larry Bird. Larry Bird's trash talk has always been legendary. There are many stories of his psychological warfare on the basketball court that have been told by other players many times until they became part of NBA lore. He would tell opponents exactly what he was going to do, where he was going to shoot from, and then celebrate even before the ball hit the net. He was that confident. In other words, you can say that he was the man, the myth, the legend. Larry would even walk into opposing arenas on Christmas Day and wish everyone a Merry Christmas before destroying their team. But if we were to talk about his greatest trash talk story, it wouldn't come from a playoff or a championship series. Rather, it would come off from a regular season game in Indianapolis, when a young and rather cocky Reggie Miller thought that he could get inside the head of perhaps one of the greatest trash talkers in the history of sports. But what happened next to Miller would haunt him for years, and he didn't know what was coming. This isn't just a story about regular trash talk, but it's a story about respect, intimidation, and what happens when a rookie who literally just came into the team tries to face off against the greatest trash talk of all time. So, how did it begin? And what exactly ignited the beef between them? Let's talk about it. The beginning. Interestingly, Reggie Miller's relationship with Larry Bird began with nothing but kindness. During Miller's rookie year with the Indiana Pacers, the team was playing against the Boston Celtics. There, Dennis Jackson was shooting a free throw, and Miller found himself standing next to Larry Bird, who was waiting for the rebound. In the middle of the game, Bird turned to the rookie, patted his butt, and said something he would never tell anyone else. He said, "Keep working hard, Reggie. You're going to be a great one." This is what ignited a lot of passion in Reggie Miller himself. He knew he was destined for greatness. Being a 22-year-old rookie, hearing those words from Larry Bird was like receiving validation from God himself. Miller played it cool outside while maintaining his composure like a professional. But inside, we all know he was screaming with excitement. Larry Bird was a 3-time MVP, 3-time champion, and the league's best player. This guy just told Miller he was going to be great. But let's not downplay Miller's achievement here because he's always been around accomplished players before. He played against the best in college, and now he was competing against NBA All-Stars every single night. But this was different. This was Larry the Legend, a player who was respected even by his greatest enemies. However, just 2 years after that match, Miller would learn that Larry's kindness had its limits. And if you tease him the wrong way, those limits would give birth to the most brutal psychological warfare that anyone could ever have. The setup. Then came Miller's third season, where the Pacers were hosting the Boston Celtics at Market Square Arena. This time, Indiana had a legitimate chance to beat the defending champions on their home court. This has almost never happened before, because most of the time, the Celtics were dominant. And this is an era when Bird was still in his prime and rarely lost games that they needed to win. However, on that specific night, the Pacers were hanging tough. Miller was also having a great game, hitting shots from all over the court, particularly from beyond the three-pointer line. The crowd was excited, and the team was also sensing that they might just pull off the biggest upset in the history of the NBA. Miller was also feeling himself playing with the confidence of a young man who had all in him. Now the game is in the final minutes. Despite the Pacers' best efforts, the Celtics still somehow clawed back and took the lead. The game was hanging in the balance when Larry Bird went to the free throw line to ice the victory. That's where Reggie Miller made his worst mistake, which would cost them the match. The error. As Bird prepared to shoot his free throws, Miller decided to use the tactic he knew best. He wanted to break the rhythm and delay the free throw attempt, and make them think about the pressure of the moment rather than just executing their free throw. Miller crossed the lane once while forcing the official to hold the ball. However, Bird waited patiently. If there is one thing you know about Bird, it is that he never falls under pressure. Then Miller crossed again, drawing out the moment, trying to get into Bird's head and to get a reaction out of him. It's a common psychological tactic that is used often in sports like basketball and football, and is especially effective against players who overthink or get nervous in this clutch situation. But there was just one problem. Larry was never that player. He was, in his own estimation, the best clutch shooter in basketball history, and Reggie Miller, a third-year player, was trying to make him nervous. You see where that disconnect happens? The official handed the ball back to Bird, where he dribbled once, then stopped. He looked directly at Reggie with an expression that was shocking. He said the words that would echo through NBA history. He told Miller, "Reggie, are you flipping kidding me?" This was the moment that changed everything. But Bird's voice cut through the noise. He wasn't whispering. He was trying to keep this between them while also broadcasting this humiliation to everyone within range. That's where Miller's whole world fell off, and he was still positioned on the free throw line, trying to respond with something to save his face. But here, Bird wasn't alone. He was just getting started. But before we reveal the big moment that happened next, please subscribe to the channel and ring the bell icon for more. The destruction. What happened next is the most destructive piece of trash talk in basketball history. Bird was standing at the free throw line with thousands of people watching him with the game online. He looked directly at Reggie Miller and delivered a series of dominant lines. First, he said, "I am the best shooter this game has ever seen." He said it loudly so that everyone could hear the other player, the official, and the crowd. Miller's teammates and his family, along with their friends, were staring at the match too, and everyone folded under pressure. But it didn't stop there because Larry then said, "You think you are going to be able to ice me?" This was to add another insult to the psychological warfare. And Bird calmly shot the free throw, and it went in. Nothing but net. Miller was already destroyed. And mind you, this was his home arena. His family was in the crowd, and his friends were watching. Miller crossed the lane, and he was shocked. That's when Kevin McHale, who was Bird's Celtics teammate and was also on the free throw line, leaned over and twisted the knife. He said, "Yeah, that was kind of stupid of you, to do something like that." Even the opposing team was clowning him, and Miller's own psychological tactic became his worst demise and a source of entertainment for everyone in the building. After that, Miller didn't say a word to Bird for the rest of the game because what could he possibly say? He would be completely demolished. Bird becoming the coach. The story could have easily ended there, but unfortunately, it didn't, because fate had some other plans in store for him. Several years after retiring as a player, Larry Bird took over as head coach of the Indiana Pacers. The team he was coaching was led by none other than Reggie Miller, the same player he'd humiliated at the free throw line years earlier. The 1997 to 1998 season was when Bird's first time as a head coach began, and he led those Pacers into one of the greatest single-season turnarounds in NBA history. They went all the way to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals, even facing Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls for the right to go to the NBA Finals. Here, the Pacers had a lead in the fourth quarter of the game. Miller hit 2 straight shots, and the upset seemed possible. But during a timeout, Bird made a controversial decision to take Miller out of the game for the last 5 minutes, as the Bulls were getting their comeback. Miller sat on the bench, watching his team lose. He was angry. And it didn't matter that the Bulls won their 6th championship. It didn't matter that people forgot the decision. But the only thing that mattered to him at that point was that he got benched in the biggest game of his career by a man who had already humiliated him at the free throw line years before. When the game ended and the team boarded the bus for the ride home, Miller was ready to square off with Larry Bird. But first, he thought that he was going to ignore him and make his displeasure known through his silence. However, as Miller approached Bird's seat on the bus, Bird looked up at him with a beard in his hand and said the 5 words that forever squashed the beef. "Jalen, I messed up." Miller stopped there because he didn't expect honesty. He expected defensive excuses and maybe another lecture on how he didn't play enough defense. Instead, Bird admitted that it was his fault that he let Miller bench. And whatever happened, they were in this together. Bird's coaching style. This shows us one big thing. Larry Bird has a nonsensical attitude towards coaching that also defined his playing career. He kept things mostly simple, which is to be on time, play unselfish basketball, but play hard. This sounds basic on paper, but Bird enforced this principle with the consistency that most people aren't ready for. Many other players tell stories about how Bird was obsessed with punctuality. If anyone was late, they got fined. If they were late for the team's playing, the doors were closed, and the team would go without you. This wasn't an empty threat, but this was Bird's discipline that went through the team itself. He actually did it once during preseason when he left 2 players running after the plane on the tarmac as it took off. After that particular incident, no one was late. His coaching style was direct. There would be no complex schemes, just a direct question that demanded improvement. And for most players, it worked. Players started respecting Bird because he never asked them to do anything he hadn't done himself. They have all seen him play before, and they were ready to level up for their coach. This was the most hilarious story of Larry Bird that went from being serious to becoming enemies with the player and then becoming his own coach at one point. It seems absurd, but this just goes to show that the world is so small. Even your enemies could become your coach and then your friends. And if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to our channel, where we uncover legendary moments like these.